This is Punk Rock and Politics, and today is May 23rd, 2017, and this is episode number 23. Let's do this.
These days are strange, it's true.
I would bomb the shit out of them.
If you think that punk rock doesn't mix with politics, you're wrong.
Welcome to Punk Rock and Politics. Today we'll be talking to drummer Zach Jones from the band Fossil Youth about the band's new full-length album, the importance of voting, and the relevance of third parties. Then on Open Mic's Last Call, we'll talk about Trump's budget plan and touch on the state pension crisis. So let's get to the political mosh pit, but first, here's the news of the week.
Here's what's making news.
And we will be sure to help our Saudi friends to get a good deal.
According to Representative Chaffetz, former FBI Director James Comey will speak to Special Counsel Mueller before testifying publicly. Comey is getting ready to testify to a Senate special counsel about the alleged Russian interference with the 2016 election.
Today we begin a new chapter that will bring lasting benefits to all of our citizens. I stand before you as a representative of the American people to deliver a message of friendship and hope and love. That is why I chose to make my first foreign visit a trip to the heart of the Muslim world. Our vision is one of peace, security, and prosperity in this region and all throughout the world. Our goal is a coalition of nations who share the aim of stamping out extremism.
And that's Trump gone overseas. President Trump started a Middle East tour in Saudi Arabia and will visit with Israel Prime Minister as well as the President of Palestine. The trip was kicked off with a $350 billion arms deal, benefiting the military-industrial complex companies such as Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon.
This landmark agreement includes the announcement of a $110 billion Saudi-funded defense purchase. And we will be sure to help our Saudi friends to get a good deal from our great American defense companies, the greatest anywhere in the world.
The deal is the largest in the U.S.-Saudi relationship, and giving more weapons to the same nation that funded the 9/11 attacks? What could go wrong? General Michael Flynn will plead the Fifth and refuses to hand over documents relating to the Russian connection with the Trump campaign team for the 2016 election Senate panel. On Monday, the Supreme Court struck down 2 congressional district maps in North Carolina. According to the Supreme Court, the state had engaged in an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. The Constitution entrusts states with the job of designing congressional districts, Justice Elena Kagan wrote for the majority. But it also imposes an important constraint. A state may not use race as the predominant factor in drawing district lines unless it has a compelling reason. The Supreme Court ruling will send the North Carolina legislature back to the redrawing 2 congressional districts. This ruling could have an impact on the 2018 midterm elections. And on this day in rock history, May 23, 1973, Jefferson Airplane were prevented from playing a free concert in Golden Gate Park when San Francisco authorities passed a resolution banning electric instruments. The group would go on to write, "We built this city," about the ban. And that's the news of the week! I'm sure I've said it a million times before, but it must be said again. One of my favorite things about the Punk Rock and Politics podcast is discovering new bands and new music, and that I get to present to you. And today, of course, I'm not gonna let you down. We have an amazing band called Fossil Youth from Oklahoma. Oklahoma? And what is it in the water in Oklahoma that breeds such good bands? I mean, seriously. And Fossil Youth definitely keeps up with that state's reputation on producing great music. Fossil Youth is an alternative punk band with heavy emo undertones. Fossil Youth have smooth melodies that are delivered over a warm, solid rhythm section and are able to seamlessly transition into a more aggressive indie punk sound. It's really impressive. Their first full-length album titled A Glimpse of Self-Joy highlights this from beginning to end. And I was lucky enough to talk to Zach Jones, Fossil Youth's drummer, but before we get to the interview, let's hear one of their songs. This is Common Ghosts by Fossil Youth. And that was Common Ghost by Fossil Youth. And I'm lucky enough to have Zach Jones here, the drummer, join us here in the political mosh pit. What's up, Zach?
Not much, man. Sitting in a van right now outside of a venue in Denver, Colorado. Ready to smoke the podcast out.
Right on. Yeah, I was actually, that's funny because I was totally going to ask you, you guys are on tour, or you have some tours planned, right?
Yeah, we're on tour right now. We're actually finishing up. This is the next to last day of this run right now. We did a 2.5 week run starting in Nashville, going out to the West Coast, working our way up, and we're working our way back down right now, back to Oklahoma City for our final show tomorrow night.
Oh, cool. And you guys are from Oklahoma, so you're kind of like finishing out hometown with a bang, right?
Yeah,
cool.
Which is actually really cool because I don't think we've ended a tour in Oklahoma for about 2+ years. So it's always nice to like finish out at home where you know it's going to be strong and you're among friends and peers and everything. So it should be really cool.
And the best part, you could sleep in your own bed after.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a short drive away from my own personal heaven, and that will be amazing.
Right. So, any fun stories that you guys have been out on tour?
Just being out here, it's been a good time. We made sure to make a stop by the Taco Bell Cantina in Las Vegas, and I don't know if anyone's heard of that, but it's Taco Bell that serves alcohol.
Oh,
so
okay.
you can actually put alcohol in your Baja Blast or your like
slushies.
frozen lemonade.
Oh man,
that
could be dangerous.
So that was probably wild.
Vegas, you got to go big, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't necessarily know that we went big because we just went to a Taco Bell. Too much money on alcohol blast, but I mean, yeah, for the tour life, yeah, that was definitely a pretty baller move on our part.
Definitely. No, it's because you got your full extent of drinkage for a good price because it's Taco Bell, right? I would imagine.
Exactly. And you just kind of can't go wrong with a nice Baja Blast with a little vodka or rum in it, or whatever you pick.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and that's a unique experience in general. But yeah, the whole tour's just been really good, and there's probably just too many crazy things for me to narrow down to just one, but that's the highlight that came to mind instantly when you asked me the question.
That's perfect. Oh, that's perfect. And this tour is basically off for your your album, Glimpse of Self-Joy. That's what this tour is for, more or less?
Yes, that's our first full-length LP that we released about a little over 6 months ago right now. And we're actually touring in support of Daisy Head, our friends who are on No Sleep Records. And they just put out a full-length LP. Oh, we're on like the second half of their full U.S. tour supporting that LP. We're supporting ours as main support with that. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, they were definitely, I saw you were playing with them and I heard them. They're really cool music. And I have to say your album, A Glimpse of Self-Joy, that thing is solid. And I love that it's a full-length album and it's solid beginning to end, That's always good. I don't like it when usually there's a track or two in the middle that's kind of, So.
No, I understand. We try and make it as solid from cover to cover.
Definitely. So speaking of covers, your album artwork, the cover is pretty badass. Is there any thing about that? What's the backstory on that?
The backstory, it's done by an artist, and I'm gonna hate myself for not being able to remember her name. But basically, we already had all of the tracks lined up, and the album in general kind of compartmentalized and thought all the way through. And Scotty, our vocalist and rhythm guitar, found that online, and he kind of just had a feeling that it stuck with the theme and the look of it. Design of everything was real nice, and we've been able to take the picture of the silhouette of the girl and put it onto a lot of different things that's been worked really well for both just promotion and design purposes and stuff like that. We've got her on hats and enamel pins and shirts. The general consensus is that we did a good job picking the artwork for that album, and I really think that it in general it molds really well with the album concept and ideas and feelings that it has within it. So we were real to kind of stumble upon that one day.
Oh, that's super lucky. Yeah, and you're giving that artist promotion and everything as well. And it's, like you said, it definitely fits. It just, because, nowadays the album cover is really important because it comes up on Spotify, YouTube, anything that you're going to be listening to the music, Pandora, the album cover comes out. So it is important. And I think a lot of bands just kind of throw something together. But when I saw that, I was like, wow, that was really thought through, and it looks very nice, and like you said, it fits.
Yeah,
definitely.
I appreciate that a lot. It's definitely one of those, it's definitely a very, I hate to say it, but a very marketable aspect of any album is the kind of imagery that pops into your head when you try and think of listening to it, or like you said, when you look it up online or something like that, and the colors, design, and everything for it, because we even used the colors that we used on the artwork. We then translated that to, because the main colors like red, orange, and black, and then we translated those colors to the 3 different variants of vinyl. So we had a tricolor with bone red and black, one that was straight orange, and then a black with a red center. So,
nice.
Like I said, the album as a package really worked super well together with all the artwork and design and everything. So, yeah, we couldn't be more grateful for that design and album artwork in general. So.
Nice. That's awesome. I love how you guys put it on vinyl and sell that, and I'm just happy that's coming back in general, but that's great. I might have to pick one up myself.
Most definitely, man. I would.
Yeah. So let's play one more song, and then we'll come back and get into the political mosh pit. So here on all these songs that we're playing today, they're all off this album, A Glimpse of Self-Joy. And here's We're Caving In by Fossil Youth. And that was We're Caving In by Fossil Youth. And I have Zach Jones still here with us, the drummer. And I didn't introduce the whole band in the previous segment, which I do want to do really quick. So it's Scotty, Derek, you, Zach, and then Heston, right?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I want to give everyone props. We're just talking to Zach today. So, but yeah, let's get into the political mosh pit. So I thought it was really funny. We were joking before air that you were thinking about running for mayor when you're 18.
I still got the email to prove it too.
Exactly. So I was like, you're totally ready for marketing purposes and everything,
Yeah. Well, especially when I was in high school, I was part of a political debate team, and my senior year, I really didn't do anything besides music and that political debate team and discussions and stuff like that. So that's where most of my time was going to. So when I graduated at 18, I was really probably too headstrong in thinking that I could run for mayor and do a good job. But I mean, in retrospect, it's a good thing that the town made me wait 7 years to gain a little bit more. It's outside of a classroom, so. Yeah.
It's kind of like when you're young, you have a lot of confidence, and then as you get older, society kind of beats it out of you, And
for
so
sure.
You're wiser, but you're kind of lacking in confidence almost.
Or jaded.
Yeah, or you're just cynical about how the system works because you're more knowledgeable how fucked up it is in general. So,
exactly.
So let's speak of like one of the many ways to fix the system, not be jaded. So, voting and like the importance of voting. So we just had the 2016 election. A lot of people, one of the biggest, craziest elections in recent history. So what's your perception on voting, nationally and locally?
Well, voting in general is just a really, I don't know, it's a very powerful tool that I think the powers that be would like you to believe that it's not as powerful as it seems. Because I know the biggest problem, especially with people in, the millennial generation or just around my age, the 30 and youngers and even a little bit past that, everyone has a problem and a perception that, well, my vote doesn't count, or if I do vote, it won't matter because there's too many other people voting against it, this and that. And a lot of people don't realize how much their vote actually counts, which is so frustrating because it should be obvious that your vote is important. I mean, it should, if anything, it's very evident by the fact that the powers that be try and make voting as difficult as possible.
Yeah.
If people at the top really didn't worry about voting, they wouldn't be, gerrymandering districts to align with party lines. They wouldn't still have the electoral college way past when it's needed. They would allow felons to vote and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because the general public, if allowed easy access to vote, nobody would be voting with those same old powers that be as of current. It's all old white guys doing the same thing that they've been doing for 40 years. But as long as they can tell the younger generation that their vote doesn't matter, get you to believe that no matter what you do, you can't change anything, that's good for them, because then all the old people that know that their votes do matter just keep voting. Same old white guys keep running through Congress, the Senate, the White House. There's obvious evidences of diversity and stuff like that in small doses. But I think everybody can see that the main overlying picture is one of an old white male authority.
Yeah, well, typically it's, I think what you're meaning is it's pushing the, white patriarchy perception or worldview, even if the deliverer could be of another race, such as Clarence Thomas or something. A lot. Even though he may be, African American or black, he still advocates for policies that help the white male class for the most part. So
true. That's very true. And unfortunately, a lot of that falls into the two-party political system, where if you're not part of one of the two parties, you basically have zero chance of success. And then on top of that, if you don't align with those party politics, or you don't walk the line with the rest of your members, you risk being outed, having somebody have more funding than you when you run next time, and you just basically risk your entire political career if you go against the tide of what everyone else is trying to push.
So, okay, yeah, that totally leads me into another question I wanted to get to for you. So a lot of people, when they do get cynical or jaded, and I really think the whole voting thing that started with the Gen Xers, kind of, the even so, I think even as old as 35-ish and younger, maybe even 40, some of the people just don't want to vote or don't believe in it. So people either take two routes. They're kind of I'm not even going to vote, just whatever, or they're I'm going to vote third party, or I'm going to write in Mickey Mouse, or, they do some sort of, people call it a quote unquote protest vote. So we know you think people shouldn't just not vote. So how do you feel about voting for a third party or a protest vote?
I mean, if you're going to do a protest vote, the write-in is basically throwing your vote in the trash. Now, I don't believe that voting for a third party is throwing your vote in the trash. Voting for a third party, especially in a state like Oklahoma, which has been red for the past, almost a century, and will probably be red for a very long time. Voting for a third party in that instance, since I would normally vote blue or, independent or something like that, but voting for that third party, if we could find a way to get enough of a percentage to get even one of those third parties onto the platform to present their ideas and fully express the options that Americans don't have to go with side A or side B. There's more than two colors to the political system. I think that would really start pointing things in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And I would have to say out here in California, it's the exact same, yet the opposite. Because, the Senate in the House is completely, it's a majority democratically held House and Senate. So anything they want to get through, the governor will just sign off on. So there's no opposition party here whatsoever, just like out there. So do you think that voting and pushing third parties in states like ours that are super one way would be more efficient than pushing them in a state that's like more of a purple state, like a Colorado or like a Wisconsin or something?
Yeah, well, those states, you're really walking a thin wire on that, whereas some of those like Rust Belt states and stuff like that, the difference between a Democratic or a Republican vote for the Electoral College can come down to a few thousand votes.
Mm-hmm,
so at that point, you're risking a lot to put that technical protest vote, as we'll call it, to try and voice your stand, where the protest is meaningful, but at the same time you're risking that chance of somebody else winning that you would rather option B win than option A, but you still write in the protest vote and then option A wins anyway because you didn't vote for option B,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just another thing. If more people voted in general, I think it would help the political system immensely. Even people just registered to vote. Only around 50% of registered voters actually voted this last election cycle. And only, I think, a little less than 50% of the American public is actually registered.
Yeah, exactly.
So that comes out to probably around
25, 30%. Yeah.
Quarter of the population actually vote.
Uh-huh.
Whereas versus in France, they just had their election in which Emmanuel Macron beat Le Pen. I hope I'm pronouncing that
wrong. You got it.
But they found 75% of their population votes, and that was kind of a low turnout for them.
Yeah.
And if you can only imagine, if 75% of the American population voted, how many things would be different? It
would be, it would be totally different.
Would Hillary have beaten Donald Trump? I definitely don't think Donald Trump would have won, considering the fact that he already lost by the popular vote.
Mm-hmm.
And that was with only 25% of Americans voting,
Right.
even though a majority of Americans don't stand with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But
if
Americans didn't vote.
Yeah, but if you forced a lot of people to vote, theoretically, these are like the Kim Kardashian types, or, the Sports Center, ESPN types who just don't watch anything. And if you force them to vote, they might be like, oh, I just don't like Hillary, Trump, whatever. You know what I mean? Because she just rubbed everyone the wrong way. Just because it was a change year, a change election, but they ran the most establishment candidate. So, I think, I don't know. I think Trump might have still kind of eked it out. But like you're saying about voting in Brazil, it's mandatory. So you have to vote. So it's interesting how it is totally different in all these countries. So, okay, have you heard about ranked choice voting?
I have not.
Okay, so ranked choice voting. It's the very, very first show on the podcast I talked about ranked choice voting. So it's basically where on the ballot you have a bunch of people running in the primary, and you pick your first favorite, second favorite, third, fourth. So you have like 4 votes, and you vote out of like 10 people, and then you pick 1, 2, 3, 4, your 4 favorites. So you can actually go, I really, really like this candidate, but then this one's the most logical, and then and then these 2 are okay. So you could vote in that way, and then it's basically gives people the ability to, like you were saying, well, I want to vote for third party, but I don't want to let this person win. Yeah, and it's actually picking up in a few states. They're starting to do that.
Yeah, and I think things like that and progressive movements towards newer ways of voting are great. Whether it's the ranked choice voting, like you said, or even online voting and simple voter registration booths. And I know a lot of states, the problem right now is a lot of states are restricting voter registration. They make you bring in extra forms of ID or travel long distances. There's not enough polling places set up. It's really voting in general in America is in a bad situation right now.
And why do people even have to get registered? Why isn't it just being a citizen, like you are registered? You like that just doesn't make sense. Everyone should just be registered. So because I've worked on quite a bit of campaigns, and that registration date, especially, for the primaries or the general election, usually it's 30 days or so before the election. You have to get as many people registered before that date as possible, because then after, you could talk to someone on the street, they're like, oh, I'll totally vote for your candidate. Oh, but I'm not registered. Well, you can't, it's like, it's worthless. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's just another part of that, making the voting process even more difficult just for your average everyday blue collar man. You know what I mean? I think getting rid of registration would be the single easiest thing to get as many people able to vote. I think that's the biggest hurdle out of all the hurdles you were mentioning earlier. Yeah, definitely. And especially for anybody that's not registered already, voting then for them instantly becomes a two-part process.
Yes.
Well, make sure I register in time. Then I have to remember to take time off to go down to vote for the primary. Then after the primary is over, I have to make sure that I have time off during whatever time of the day to go for the general election, and it's definitely a difficult process. And I'm lucky to live in this sense, but I live in a small town where voting, I drive to the nearest, usually a church, honestly. And I walk in and out, and my vote takes maybe 10 or 15 minutes. But I know there's a lot of places, especially like where you're from, California, New York, and busy places like that, where you can go to vote, and it can take 2+ hours.
It all depends.
Through with people's jobs and things that.
It's also here, it was with more of like the lower income neighborhoods would have long lines and less polling booths than the upper income.
You're required to go to whatever polling booth is closest to you, which I understand for, registration and efficiency reasons. But at the same time, what's stopping you from going to a polling booth that's next to your work that you can go at during lunch?
Yes.
That's near your church or near where you drop your kid off at school, or just the accessibility to voting in general. I definitely think should be easier, which I can't remember who it was, but someone's introduced into the Senate the idea of making the
national holiday,
federal holiday.
Yeah.
So whatever. Have time off and the entire day to assess themselves, get them ready for material, look over everything they need to, and take that time of the day to go vote and then go home. Not have to worry about
I'm pretty sure that was Bernie Sanders. I don't even know who else would even propose that at this point.
Yeah,
I don't even know who would.
But I hate to just.
No, I'm not sure, but I know exactly. Someone proposed that, though.
Yeah, no, and I definitely think things like that and just streamlining the voting process in general. And like you said, the fact that you have to register is strange in the first place, considering when you turn 18, you have to register for the draft.
Right.
So why automatic voting registration card,
Well, we all know that the military-industrial complex is way more important than having people vote.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially in the eyes of the higher powers, but that's a completely different podcast.
Definitely, that's a whole nother subject. So and that's the problem, I think, too, because people I'm assuming you and I know me and probably anyone who's listening to this podcast, we're politically aware and we kind of somewhat enjoy being in the politics world. So when we vote, it's kind of like a fun thing, and enjoyable, and when it is. But the average person, they're so busy with their life and their time that, like you said, if it was a federal holiday, it would be obvious, Memorial Day or Flag Day. Everyone knows when these days are. 4th of July.
Yeah, I just think there's some major changes that need to happen, and I think changes are coming in the near future, because I think with a lot of the disgust and, second thought questioning and all the things that are going on with the Trump administration right now is having a lot of people step back and say to themselves, wow, we really didn't think this through. There's got to be some way to make this a better system for everybody to, just improve the political process in general. And I think voting is at the heart of the very first step that we got to take to get some of that action done.
Definitely. We have many tools, and that's one of them. So, we have to use it. And then us politically aware people, we can do more of the more intense stuff like campaigning and getting out there and stuff, because that's tough. Yeah, the grassroots work. But hey, and when you run for mayor, let me know. We'll be pushing your campaign.
Awesome. You can do a follow-up podcast.
Yeah. I'll do some phone banking for. I'll be like, we're doing Zach Jones for mayor over here. So well, thanks for joining us here on the podcast, man. That was a really good subject. I think that needs to be addressed.
Oh, thank you, man. And I definitely, that's why I chose it, because it's definitely something that's important, and especially people around my age and people in the punk, DIY, and music scene in general that just feel like their voice isn't being heard and that there's something they got to do about it. But it, really just comes down to voting. If you really want to rebel, if you really want to change stuff, they'll want you to think it's some other way, but I'll tell you right now, the best way to do it is voting, getting out there and doing it.
Changing the system. So before I let you go, what's the best place for people to find like Fossil Youth, your guys' music?
We're on Spotify, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's all under the same handle, just Fossil Youth, Apple Music, Tidal, whatever you're using.
Whatever their social media of choice is, just search Fossil Youth and you'll find them. Cool.
Covered for sure.
Awesome. Well, Dan, I definitely have to say it again. I really dig the album. I hope anyone listening here if you like the songs, go check out, because the songs are like great, but the whole album is it's a masterpiece. So great job on the album, and we'll play one more on the way out here. This is Watercolor Daydream by Fossil Youth.
Impatient all of the time, and every once in a while it's followed by a brash goodbye. I know I hurt you even though I never really wanted to. You said you lost faith in me for good, like when the water meets the sand, things will dissipate and all the good in me will resurface. Come back to me, find that what we have is worth it. Constant memories flood my everyday scenery. The grass is always greener where I will never be. I'll retrace my steps, burning every bridge that's ever carried counterfeit feelings. I'll make amends. This time I'll make a difference. Like when the water meets the sand, things will dissipate and all the good in me will resurface. Come back to me, find that what we have is worth it. Salvage every piece, tell me what you do and don't want to see. Envelop every
All right, that was Fossil Youth. That band is pretty awesome. They're definitely another band going onto my Spotify playlist. I am getting so much new music from doing this podcast to listen to. It's awesome. I'm just stoked. And that's a great album. Like I said, definitely go check it out. I want to say thanks again to Zach Jones for coming on here and talk about voting and stuff. You know, it's you could totally tell when someone's very knowledgeable or passionate about a certain subject, and you could tell that Zach he's both. He was passionate and he did know quite a bit about voting and about certain barriers and stuff. So I got to give major props to him for that. So welcome to Open Mic's Last Call. We're gonna wrap up this show. I wasn't really sure if I was gonna even do this little segment this week because I'm just really tired and I didn't know what I was going to talk about. And if anyone who actually knows me, like in person, if they heard me say that, be like, oh, I didn't know what I was going to talk about. And be like, what? Well, no, you're always rambling or ranting and going off about some crazy shit. So how can you not have something to talk about, right? So I figured, I could do it. All I have to do is just push record and here we go. So let's do this, right? So I decided in this little section that I want to talk about Trump's tax, it's like his tax plan or his budget plan that's coming out Tuesday. So it's coming out today, but this podcast is pre-recorded. So I recorded, a day or two before. So I have a listing of what is proposed is going to be cut, and I'm pretty sure that's like, this is what's going to happen. But because it just sounds like what the Republicans and what Trump would want. But basically, the blueprint is to include cuts for programs such as Medicaid, food stamps, federal employee pensions, which that's huge. We'll get back to that in a second. Farm subsidies, which I thought that was very interesting. And then also they want to do more military spending. So, okay, so we're going to cut Medicaid, food stamps, federal employee pensions, and farm subsidies. Okay, well, all of those are pretty obvious that they do, except the pensions and the farm subsidies. Okay, here's the thing with the federal pensions. See, the states, every state, I need to do an open mic night just on the state pension crisis right now that's going on. All the states haven't been putting enough money away in their state funds, their pension funds, to be able to pay out all these people who are going to start retiring here really soon. So now that I see on this cut, if the federal government is also cutting from federal government pensions, once the states really start buckling here coming very soon and start running out of money to be able to pay their state pensions, this money that they promised employees that they're going to get. See, employees agreed to take a lower wage because, okay, you're going to get the pension. But then now, all these right-wing politicians want to be like, look at these greedy teachers, look at these greedy police officers taking this huge pension. You in the private sector, you don't have a pension, but this greedy teacher has a pension. Oh, what a horrible person that when a teacher retires, they're going to get money on top of Social Security because that's what they agreed on when they got hired. Oh, what a horrible person. But we got to cut the pensions. So I'm very, very curious to see if the federal pension cuts actually get on. We know they're going to cut food stamps. We know they're going to cut Medicaid and Medicare. They're going to cut as much as they can when it comes to any sort of aid programs. But that I thought was very interesting because the states are starting to have a big, they're going to have a big crisis here because they haven't been putting enough money away, and a lot of them are underwater by a significant amount. So over here in California, we're one of the worst actually, which if you're thinking about getting a government job, it might not because of the pension and because of all the benefits that you get when you're retire might not be a good idea, because it's looking like the states haven't been putting enough money away in order to pay back all these pensions. So we'll see, and we'll see if Trump gets his budget plan passed, because right now a lot of the Republicans, a lot of the new cuts are kind of unpopular, even with some of the Republicans. For example, like Mike Conway, a Republican from Texas. He's basically saying, he's against cutting the farm subsidies. So Trump's going after everyone on this, and he wants to give massive tax cuts to, the top 1%, top 2%. And they also want to make less tax brackets, which would basically make more people paying less into the system. So, which is terrifying, because the thing that a lot of people don't want to admit is that if he does get these tax cuts through for the top 1% and for the corporations, bringing it down to, I believe, 15%. It's at 35%. They want to bring it down to 15%, which would be the largest corporate tax cut ever in the history of tax cuts. But the thing is, it will boom. It will give the economy a huge boom. But the thing with our economy and all, capitalist economies is, if you have a boom, it has a bust. What goes up must come down, because it can't be constantly growing or constantly booming. And we're already in the third longest economic growth period in American history. The only other two longer growth periods that we've had was in the 90s and then in the 50s right now. So we're due for a recession or a correction in the market. And that's why these pension funds that with the governments is not a good thing, because if we do hit another recession, and then all of a sudden the government, the state, local governments, and then as well as the federal government, if they don't have money to be able to pay out these pensions, what are they going to do? Where are they going to get the money? I just think this is not looking good when it has to do with all that. So we'll see how this goes, and we'll kind of watch it. And I mean, we'll definitely cover here on the Punk Rock and Politics podcast. But I don't know. I just don't know. But just like everything with Trump, I think he's going to present a big thing, make a big deal about it, and then his own party is going to shoot him down, and it's all going to fall apart. And that's what I think is going to happen, and they'll probably barely get a budget through, probably some sort of super watered down budget that they'll have to get some sort of moderate Democrats to hop on, so they'll have to negotiate somehow, because once they go super extreme to make the extreme right comfortable with it, then they lose a lot of the moderate Republicans, and they obviously don't have any Democrat support, so they have to reach out to moderate Democrats and then use their moderate base, or the establishment base, to pass anything if they want to get anything done. And they're going to piss off their base. So no matter what, Trump is going to piss people off, and that's a great thing. When Trump is pissing off his base and they're getting upset, that's always funny. So that's about it. Let's wrap this up. Thanks so much for joining the podcast and making it all the way through to the very end. And thanks so much to Fossil Youth and to Zach Jones for joining us. And we will check you out next week. Peace out. Thanks for checking out Punk Rock and Politics. If you enjoyed the show and the information brought to you, please subscribe and share the podcast. It helps us here at Punk Rock and Politics, but more importantly, it helps the featured bands gain exposure. Also, if you know any bands or musicians who would like to join the political mosh pit and have their music featured on the Punk Rock and Politics podcast, please email us at punkrockandpolitics@gmail.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. And rock on, political junkies.
I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives.
Doing a better job of talking to each other. The left hand now knows what the right hand is doing.
Look at those hands. Are they small hands? And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it. And we will be sure to help our Saudi friends to get a good deal from our great American defense companies, the greatest anywhere in the world.